In today's video, we're going to do a deep dive into Netflix. Why Netflix, you might ask? Well, it's one of the few stocks that's standing out inside of the S&P 100. It's currently leading the way in terms of profitability with the opening range breakout setup. And if you look at the actual stock chart, we're pulling back to some interesting Fibonacci levels inside of a zone that I would call a buy zone. Let's dive deeper into Netflix in today's video. Now we're going to start first with understanding its post-earnings personality, what tends to happen, then we'll see what actually ended up happening, and we'll bring that together with the day trading setup with the opening range breakout. Now if we start with the daily time frame chart here first, Netflix reported earnings back in July. I've loaded in our post-earnings indicator. This is a free indicator available to all of our Volatility Box members. And in this post-earnings indicator, I'm looking at 14 days after earnings to see what tends to happen inside of Netflix. Now, if we take a look at the stats, I'm looking at 5 years worth of data. Let's load in a max total available data here. This goes all the way back to 2008. So that gives us a lot more data. And if we use that data, we can see that post earnings, Netflix tends to rise about 70% of the time, and it tends to fall about 30% of the time. So that tells us we have the 70-30 breakdown where more often than not, price tends to rise. Now this time, after Netflix reported, we fell inside of that 30% bracket. I think that's a clue. What usually happens did not happen, and that I think opens up this can of worms of where do we go from here. Now with all of that, I have this buy zone, this bias that I want to be long somewhere in here. However, up until that standpoint, I think Netflix might continue to have bearish setups, might continue to have bullish setups. I'm not sure which direction. I want to have a simple way to know which direction I should be focusing every single day. So for that, let's come inside of our ORB Setups platform. This is orbsetups.com, and I'm currently on the Reporting tab. I've loaded in the S&P 100, and I'll take you through what I'm seeing. If you start with the strategy performance of the S&P 100, here's the first thing that should stand out. The 5-minute range across both the breakout setup and the pullback setup, we have negative P&Ls and negative, or rather red win rates. It's the negative P&L that to me gives me caution, so I'm not too focused on this 5-minute range for many of the stocks inside of the S&P. There might be a handful of nuggets, but really otherwise the 5-minute range right now is not working. We move on to the 15-minute range, and there you can see the breakout setup is a really nice setup that has been working quite well. And if you move to the 30-minute setup, both the breakout and the pullback setups have positive P&Ls. So that gives you 3 different setups that you might want to focus on where the larger basket tends to outperform. That's the 15-minute breakout setup and the 30-minute breakout and pullback setup. Now, if we were to dive deeper into the S&P 100, into the symbol profitability, take a look at which stock is leading the way at the top. Netflix, and we're outperforming 61.8% win rate. So let's dive deeper into Netflix just for a little bit here. So we combine everything that we just learned. We knew that Netflix is a stock we want to focus on. We want to ignore the 5-minute range. Let's start with the 15-minute range. And 15-minute breakout is what we're looking at. I'm going to run this with the 1-to-1. That's a half range target, half range stop, both directions, long and short. And we're running a backtest here to see what happens inside of Netflix. Now, with this, we can see we have a 60% blended win rate, for long 62.5%, for shorts 57.14%. In both cases, greater than 50%, and in both cases, we have a positive P&L. So that tells me that when we go for a 1-to-1 risk to reward on that 15-minute breakout, we tend to win more often than lose. Now, what happens if we leave our stop at the half range stop, but we go for a full range target, so a wider target? If we were to look at that, we can see our long trades, while they do drop below 50%, still we maintain a positive P&L, and our short trades are doing quite well. And if you're unfamiliar with these terms, I've made a full video in which we break this down in more detail. But if we look at today's setup here with the 30-minute breakout, here was the 30-minute range that Netflix formed, the 30-minute high, the 30-minute low. We broke below it shortly after the 30-minute range formed. This was a bearish short side breakout. We pulled all the way back to the half range mark, and we ended up making a move down to T1, and we fell a little bit shy of T2, which was a little further down here. So those are the metrics, the terms to know. Now if we come in and we adjust this, what happens if we expand our stop here? If we expand to a full stop, we can see that all of a sudden that win rate is jumping up. So that's telling us inside of Netflix, if you were to play this 15-minute opening range, then you want to try and give it room outside of the other side's opening range. Right now, that's what's performing well. So if you were to say take this bearish breakout, you'd want to try and have the stop outside of the other side's range. In case that's too wide, a way to cut that in half is to simply cut that in half and take the entry at the half range mark. That's what we would call the pullback setup. So let's test that. We saw on the aggregate, the 15-minute pullback setup wasn't doing too hot here. If we come in, 15-minute opening range, pullback setup, negative P&L. Let's see what happens inside of Netflix if we looked at this pullback setup. Here, we're seeing a win rate that's greater than the 50%, and our P&L is still positive. So that's another way that you can find a setup inside where you can outperform what the broader basket is doing. If you were to come into the 30-minute now, and we run that same pullback backtest, we see a similar win rate, which is greater than 50%. We see similar positive strategy P&L. If we were to scroll down to the stats, we can get a breakdown of both the long and the short side setups, and this gives us at least one market that we can focus on. If we come back to the pullback setup, we can compare and contrast to see, well, which does better? Is it the pullback or the breakout setup? Is it the pullback where we give it a little bit more room, or can we be a little bit tighter with our stops? That helps you build a picture, a profile for the stocks that are leading the way, which we can see Netflix is at the very top of, but there's other stocks that are right behind Netflix as well. You have Tesla, you have Broadcom, you have Texas Instruments, you have FedEx, you have T-Mobile, you have Home Depot, you have AMD, all which are currently performing well, and you can find the exact setup using the backtester, do a little bit of homework, and then be prepared for both the breakout and the pullback setups, given how fast some of these actually trigger. I hope you found this video helpful. For those of you who are our opening range breakout traders, this is a nice way to bring together not only our daily Fibonacci levels, but also piece that together with the post-earnings patterns with intraday setups like this opening range breakout setup, which allows you to take advantage of some of these moves. Take care, and I'll see you in our next update.